Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. My name is Olivia Odero. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I'm also a co-founder here at Ayeng Cafe. So yeah, just wanted to talk today about education and just some thoughts. Just wanted to share some thoughts and also wanted to hear from you guys like what you think about some of the things that are going on in our society, system wise in terms of like what kind of education are we getting? Where is it getting us to? Is it getting us to the place where we want to be, or are we just doing it to do it? So it's gonna be just a little bit of different things, just thinking through all these things. So some of the questions I had is that, why are we the most educated generation, yet the most unemployed? And, this is in terms of not just here in America, but also like back where I come from, in Kenya, in Africa as a whole. Like we know of people who have gone to universities, have gotten educated according to what the system prescribes, but at the end of the day they do not have a job. At the end of the day they end up doing menial things that do not even go in line with what they were educated for. So just that one question makes you wonder, like, okay, what's going on here? Like, why is education not availing that which we think or we expect it should avail? The other question I had is, how come we are the most educated generation, but yet the most lacking in basic everyday life skills? For example, cooking or budgeting, or making beds. All these things they're funny to think of, but in reality, like, we are raising a generation, and some of us even in this generation do not have those basic life skills, but yet we hold degrees. Like, people hold PhDs, people hold master's degrees, but yet at the end of the day the most basic life skills do not they cannot do. So that's another question. Another question is, how come we are the most educated generation but the most in debt? And sometimes even that debt is as a result of the schooling and the education that we've acquired and amassed. So it just doesn't add up. Like, what is going on or what is not going on? Like, why pay all this money to get educated and then end up living the rest of your life paying back that money to the institutions? It's like, it just doesn't add up to me. I don't know about you, but I'm just like, something is not right here. Like, in depth for almost the amount of years you are in school, keep on paying that money back. So those are some things, like, it just doesn't make sense. It's like a slavery of some kind. This is just my own opinion, because even after people are educated, after people go to school, after people get all those degrees, after people are doing all these amazing things that we are told to do, they end up like working like slaves. People are like nine to five or whatever amount of time. It's like all these hours working, all these hours working to pay debts, working to just try to survive, not even thrive, and just busy. Like, it just doesn't add up. Like, the most prime time of our lives is spent just kind of like going around in circles and in cycles. So these are some of the things that I've just been thinking about, and I'm like, you know what? Like, is there something that can be done differently? Because it's not like education is bad. Nothing about higher education or even the trainings we go to or conferences, nothing about those things is bad. Not like, it's not that we should throw away the baby with the bathwater, but it's more like, can we utilize it in a way that it doesn't put people in bondage? Can we utilize it in a way that it doesn't make life feel like, look so miserable? Like, oh, when you talk to your kids about, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like those small print, that people say so quickly. It's like, oh, and by the way, when you reach there, just know that you'll be busy, you won't have time to enjoy your life, you'll be paying off, credit card debt, you'll be paying off school debt. So it's like the prime time of our life that we should be exploring and understanding, what and who we are, in the sense of like what can I add to the society that is so beneficial? How can I be just of, like, it's a prime time of life, in early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. Like, that's the prime time of people's lives when they're raising their families. Prime time of life when people are just have so much energy to even explore, do all these things. But unfortunately, it's also the time of life, because of the systems that are in place, that people are so bound. People are bound trying to make ends meet. People are bound trying to just reach the next goal of success, but never reaching it. And it's like we're raising a tired generation. It's so weird. It's like people constantly, like, people are just, I'm so tired, I'm so busy, I'm so tired, I'm so busy. And it's like, but this is the prime time of your life. Because it's so unfortunate. It's like when people retire is when you're like, okay, now let me explore. But even the energy to do that sometimes is not there. So it's kind of, to me, and I'm like, it's just kind of like upside down somewhere. Like, I'm not sure where it is, but it just doesn't add up. Everything that is put in place in the system, that is quote unquote what we should do, but at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it's working for the masses or working for everyone. It works for some people, but it just doesn't seem like it's working. So, as I said, I'm just looking at my notes here. Not everything about education is bad, because education is very beneficial. It helps people become more efficient in the field that they're in, or in the field that they would like to be in. It helps remove ignorance in some ways. There are things we may not know about, but once we have knowledge about it, we become critical thinkers. So we kind of enlarge our mindset, in the sense of like, okay, there are many other options. This is not just the only route to take, but there are other options of how this can be done better. So in many ways, education does help the society become better. Education also, I mean, for people who go for higher education and get those jobs because of the higher education, end up having good benefits, like depending on the job someone gets, it has good benefits and all that stuff. And then also, I mean, most of the jobs people get as a result of higher education is not as back-breaking as the menial jobs, other jobs that people do that can require a lot of just a lot of manpower, a lot of energy. It can drain someone. So there are benefits, and there are many more that I'm sure you can think about. There are benefits to education. The only thing is that, why are the issues sometimes outweighing the benefits? So kind of like I talked about unemployment, like so many people go to school, but they never get the jobs they're going to school for. They end up probably getting jobs out of their field, or they end up, not even getting a job at all. Like, it's like they might as well not have wasted or spent all that time and resources pouring it into this area, but not getting anything. And then another issue is, like, with the way even higher education is in today's world, there's just a lot of drama drama and indoctrination. Like, a lot of things happens in the college and university institutions, especially for those people who are just getting out of high school and going into college. Like, there's just, sometimes fear in parents' hearts, like, what will become of my kids? Because there's a lot of drama that goes on in college and universities that, it's another topic of itself. And then also, the other issues that, just happens, that people can be so educated in things, but they do not have basic life skills. Like, it's so unfortunate. Like, I mean, it can turn out well if they end up getting like high paying jobs where they can employ people to do that for them, like either wash their clothes or do their laundry, or clean their houses and all that stuff, cook, budget, all those things. But let's say someone goes to school for years, 8 years or whatever, but never learns how to budget, never learns how to have people skills, because that's even something people need to learn. We need to learn, because it's every day we're interacting with each other. Or even cooking, or even I said making beds. Like, it's unfortunate, most people don't know how to make beds. So these are just some basic everyday life skills, and there's so many other things. But we find that the kind of education that we're being given or is in the system does not account for these different life skills. And so it's unfortunate that people can be so educated, very well put together in public, but when it comes to basic everyday life skills, they kind of suck. Like, they cannot do much to account for all this education they have, which kind of shows some of those cracks and crevices in the education system. Like, why people not being able to do this. And we can't depend on teachers to teach children all these skills, because you have like 25 kids in a class. By the time you're like, okay, today we're going to learn about cooking, or okay, today we're going to, you just can't bring a bed in class. You can't bring a bed in class, and you're like, okay, today we're going to make this bed, learn how to make this bed. It means some people don't even know how to brush their teeth. And of course, we're like, okay, their parents should teach them. This is like education in the home. But then remember that this kind of education puts some parents in that rat, or what is it called, hamster's wheel, where they're running and running. So they're so busy. Most of their kids, yeah, all their kids, if not most of them, are in daycare half of the time. So the parent doesn't even have time to teach the child these basic things, because it's like both of them are just on these wheels, running and running and running. And so that's why you sit down and you're like, there's something wrong with this picture. Like, things are not adding up. So the parent cannot teach the child how to make the bed or brush their teeth, and then the daycare, of course, cannot, because daycare, you have like who knows how many kids, unless you're making good money and you can be able to take your child to a daycare that can cater for their needs. Like, they have small number of kids. Or you're making good money and you can be able to take your child to a school that has smaller population, so they can be taught some basic stuff. Or you have a very good babysitter, or all these are other factors that it's like the parent who's like, okay, this is what I've ascribed to, now I need to figure out how to fill these cracks. Because the thing that will happen is, like, the generation that will follow us will just miss it completely. Like, they won't know anything apart from being very educated and working on tablets, like being very techno savvy. But when it comes to basic life skills, you just can't do it. So that was just another issue, like about what education sometimes does not offer to us or to our kids. The other thing is that unfortunately, the way the system is, those people who get those good, amazing jobs are highly taxed. I know this of America. I don't know about even my country back in Kenya, but I know this of America. And sometimes it's unfortunate that, like, someone gets so educated, you put all this money to get this amazing degree, you've specialized and you become the best in your field, and you're earning really good money, but the bulk of your money is being taxed, and it's like you don't even enjoy it. So those are some of the things where I'm like, this does not add up. This just doesn't add up. So what are some things we can think through? So how can we, because education is not all bad, how can we utilize the good parts of the education we have, whether it's high school, whether it's university, whether it's the trainings and all these things we pour our time and resources in? Basically, how can we utilize whatever we decide to pour our time and resources in, how can we utilize the best parts of it so that we are not pouring so much time and so much resources into it, but not getting getting a result that adds up to what we've poured into it. So I mean, these are some things that we need to be proactive about, because if we are not, we end up spending so much money and not all of it comes back. Money and resources doesn't add up to the result of what we're getting. Another thing we need to look at is like, how can we assess who needs to go down that route of some of these educational systems that we have in place, who needs to go down that route and who doesn't? Because as time, as you know, as we are advancing with technology and all these things, we are discovering that not everyone needs to go to school to be successful, because most of the times education was ascribed whenever people needed to make life better, basically to be successful. But we are living in a day and age where not all that is needed. Like, someone doesn't need to go to 8 years of school to be successful. Like, we see people are using their gifts and talents to make their lives a success. So it's very important to understand who needs to go down that route and who doesn't, because you can put someone who's very gifted and talented under the route of 8 years of education, and I'm saying 8 years because we have 4 years of bachelor's, and then we have 4 years of PhD or master's. I mean, added PhD, you're looking at like 12 years, 10 years plus. So who needs to go down this route? Because we do need people who need to go down that route of all those years of education. Because I mean, when we look at doctors, when we look at engineers, those are people who need to specialize in these fields because they need to be efficient in what they're doing. But then who doesn't need to go down that route? People who already are gifted in a certain kind of way in different fields. And you know, it takes a lot of intentionality and proactivity to just figure out like who is who needs to go down this way, who needs to go down this way, rather than ascribing it to all people and saying everyone needs to get all this education, everyone needs all these trainings, everyone needs all this, you know, whatever it is. As I said, I'm painting a broad picture of education, so whatever it applies to your life or, you know, the people you know around you. And then the last thing, we can't necessarily put away the education system because it is beneficial in many ways. The thing is like now teaching ourselves, one, but also teaching our children to be proactive about the information they're getting, because sometimes we even take our children to school and you're like, you know, what are they learning there? You know, is it helping them become critical thinkers? Because sometimes they're just fed information, and at the end of the day, it's like, where do you apply it? You know? So it's like that proactive role seems to be something that needs to happen for ourselves, and also teaching our children, because at the end of the day, we all need to sift through information, because we live in an age and day where there's so much information, there's so much knowledge, there's so many things out there that are calling for our attention, like read me, learn me, all these things. So it's being proactive, but question is, how do we do it? How do we do it in light of, you know, life and all these things? So those are just some things that, you know, we can be thinking of. And lastly, I just wanted to, you know, bring it home, to tie it in a nice bow and just present it, like after all these thoughts and ponderings, like what do we do? Like someone might be asking me like, Olivia, okay, so I've been thinking about going to school, I've been thinking about getting more education, but after hearing you, like I'm actually trying to rethink and see what options I have. So first of all, I'll just encourage like having that informed balance, having a place where you're making a balanced and informed decision, because higher education, all those trainings, all those things, nothing is bad with them. It's just understanding what is the goal. So first of all, yeah, understanding what is the goal. Some people get more education just to feel like they've achieved something, or to prove that I have made it. I knew I could do it. And that is an okay goal, but the question is it worth all the time and resources poured into it? Because if it's just for status or just for quote unquote, I have done it, or I've proved to myself that I could do something, then it kind of just doesn't add up once again, because there's a way of still getting that feeling of like, I knew I was better than what people said. I knew I could do it. There's a more affordable way to do that than pouring like all these thousands of money into something that will never be utilized. So first of all, understanding what the goal is. Is it just to get that feeling of like, I did it, I've achieved it? Is it to get the best paying job? It's good to evaluate like options, because there are also trades that do not cost as much to go to school for, but still end up giving us kind of like the same amount of money, if money is what we're looking for, or just better paying jobs. So I'll give a personal example. So like for me, I am, as I usually say, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I was so shocked to realize that I earn as much as someone working in Amazon earns. Like that kind of came to a shock, because I was talking to a friend who works in and Amazon is basically a warehouse job. So I was like, wait, it doesn't add up. Like, I've gone to school all these years, and you just got a job that doesn't require education per se, but they're earning almost as much. It's like we're just missing each other by a couple of dollars. It's not like even like $10, but it's like a couple of dollars. So those are some things that started me on this journey. Like, I've gone to school all these years, even have 2 master's degrees, and someone who hasn't gone to school all those years is earning just like we have a gap of less than $10 in our earning. So if money is one of the goals, like I would just suggest like doing homework, like figuring out like what are jobs out there and how much do they actually pay, because sometimes you can go the route of school like I did. If money was my goal, can go down the route of schooling, and then I end up earning the same as someone who's working a warehouse job, so which kind of beats the purpose, because I end up having to pay all this money out, and luckily I do not have any school debt. But let's say if I had school debt, now I end up working and I'm paying half of my paycheck to school debt, and someone who is just working a warehouse job doesn't have to have all those expenses. I sit in an office, I'm not breaking my back, but still it's like, if money is the goal, I might as well work in a warehouse job. I can choose my hours, or whatever. So understanding the goal is very important. That's just what I'm trying to say. Like, if understanding your goal, if you're like, man, I've always known I want to be a doctor, I want to be a counselor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be, fill the blanks, I want to be a nurse, and you're like, I know this is what I'm called to do, this is where my passion is, this is where I thrive, then by all means, like, pour the money into that education, because some of these things need qualifications and skills and efficiencies that cannot be learned any other way. And those positions actually call for those papers, those degrees. So understanding what the goal is very important, so that someone can be able to make that informed decision. Like, do I want to put the money here or not? And then secondly, count the cost before starting, because at the end of the day, You don't want to go into a field that will not be relevant after 5 or 10 years. So just counting the cost, like, okay, if I spend all this money here, is it going to give me what I'm thinking it will give me? Because there's some fields that may be amazing right now, but they'll be obsolete in like 5 to 10 years. They won't be in existence. There's some fields that were relevant 5 years ago, but today they're not. So it's just always counting the cost and seeing the bigger picture is very important, because it helps us make that informed decision. And of course, we can't always know if a field will be relevant in 5 to 10 years, but just kind of looking at the statistics and kind of looking at the trends. Because right now we know we're in a technology season or world, like we're entering more and more into technology. So some of those fields that have technology in place, we know that they will be relevant in a couple of years to come. But some of this customer service or all those things may not be as relevant, because we're going into that age where we're doing a lot of online services. So kind of just always putting that in perspective and in place, so that we don't end up pouring so much money into fields that will be obsolete after 5 years or 10 years. So that's a second thing to look into. A third thing is like, answering the question, like, can this goal be met in another way, before I pour all my time and resources into this? So if it's money, like as I said, there are trades and there are skills that can be learned and utilized that can still avail as much as getting a professional job. And something about trades and skills that I've learned, before I went into the profession that I've gone to, before I took this route, and that's another story for another day. There's a reason I chose this route. But I did look into trades and skills. I was like, there are skills and trades that will always be needed. Like, we will always be driving cars, whether, at some point probably we'll have flying cars, but for the next few years, we'll be still driving cars. So mechanics is like a field that will always be needed, because people are always buying cars, changing cars, needing cars fixed. And it's not like, a car is not like a phone where you can be like, well, it died, I'm just gonna buy a new one. Like, people fix their cars. People need mechanics. People need people who know their craft. And sometimes when you don't have enough mechanics, it's more expensive. But like, I actually looked into going into mechanics, because I was like, man, this is a field that will always be needed somehow, some way. Even if we start having flying cars, like, people will still need people who can make fix flying cars, or whatever that is. The other field like that, people can look into is like plumbing. Like, people will always need to go to the bathroom, and the toilets will somehow always be clogged. Like, and most of these people like get paid a lot of money. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's like one of those trades, some of those trades that we may not look into, because it's like it just passes us. We're like, because we're so focused on like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, a doctor, counselor, all these things. But then there are those basic jobs that will just kind of never run out of fashion. Because even in my field, like, there is a time counseling will become obsolete, like, because of how much books that are being offered out there about how to help yourself, or people are getting so much information that is helping them, that at some point they'll figure out how to help whatever issues is going on in their lives. But that's just to say, some of these professional jobs we get into may become obsolete. But even if they don't become obsolete, we can get fired. Life happens, there's a time it comes when you can't do it anymore. Like, there are new younger people who know you are better, are more knowledgeable. So life happens. But then with some of these trades, like, I know even a mechanic who's like 50 years old and they're still doing it. But then, of course, there's always the question of like retirement benefits, all those things. And so all those things need to be taken into consideration. Like, what do I lose by going this route? What do I gain by going down this route? What do I gain or not gain by going, the professional route? So those are things that, like, I'm really trying to push across that, like let's be thinking about them rather than going down one route. Like, we can be thinking about, like, what about this other route? What can become of it or what cannot become of it? So those are just some of the things that, I wanted to share today about education, and just encourage discussion, because one thing is that once we become aware of what's out there, or aware of different systems, then we just don't subscribe to everything. We make informed decisions, and we even advise people from an informed place, and we live the kind of life we want to live. So I'm going to look at some of the comments and see if there are questions or things that we can answer before I end this session, and then we'll call it a day. All right, let's see. So there has to be a basic level recommended for everyone post high school education. So yeah, so I think that's based on that place where I was saying, like, there's a route that seems to be ascribed or subscribed, whatever it is, to everyone. It's like, after high school, go to this or do that. But I like what Caroline said, that there has to be some basic level that can be ascribed to everyone, because there are things that higher education actually benefits us with, and that can be like critical thinking, where you learn to, because you're exposed to so much thoughts going on around there. You're exposed to different brains and brands of people who brought in different ideas. Like, when I went to masters, I came to learn of it's just counseling is has a history of all these people who've brought it into being. So it's like understanding their minds, as we're exposed to like all their writings, all these things. So, and that's kind of like up in the air, like is there a place where we can actually just get those basic things, or it can also be prerequisites, like, I'm assuming, I don't know. But thinking about it also in that way of if it's critical thinking that we want people to have or build, like, we're in an age where there's so much information that we can get exposed to all this information. So probably encouraging more reading, I don't know. But I do agree with what Caroline said, like, even after high school education, there needs to be a basic level where, like, it's not taking so much people's time and resources, and it's still helping them critically think of which field they want to go to, where they want to pour their money, what resource they want to utilize, and what step they need to make. So I agree that there needs to be a basic level before someone is just plunged into the world of, like, because sometimes you just finish high school and you're like, figure out which one you want to do. You get the prerequisites and then figure out what you want to do. Do you want to become a doctor? Do you want to become a I don't know. I mean, in college they even have basket makers. Yeah. So do you want to become a lawyer? Do you want to become an actor? Do you want to become a interior designer, a nurse? So I do agree that there needs to be that basic level. And I mean, probably there is that I don't know of. But if there's not, like, how can we still just take that proactive step of still figuring it out before starting to take out student loans, or starting out on a route that will not be utilizable, a route that will not give us what we need to make the kind of life that we've always wanted, that we know is achievable in any society. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I don't see any other comments, so we'll just call it a day for today, and I will see you on the next live video. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good day. Bye.